How's it going, guys? Today I'm sitting down with PHL Collective to talk about Ben 10 Power Trip, as that game has been out now for a little bit, and hopefully you guys have all had a chance to sit down and play it. I here have with me Nick and Terry from PHL. Would you guys mind talking a little bit about what you guys do at PHL?
Yeah, I'm Nick. I'm the founder of the company, and I pretty much do studio management, business development, that kind of stuff. All the boring things.
I'm a co-founder and I'm also the technical lead. So I'm doing a lot of the programming and managing all the programmers and that sort of thing.
A lot of people have a misconception of what goes into developing a game versus publishing a game versus owning an IP. What exactly does PHL Collective do for Ben 10 Power Trip in terms of, telling the story?
We are the developers. So that means we have the sole duty of making the game, everything from programming to art, to writing, to effects, to audio. All of that stuff is ours. We've created this game using Cartoon Network's IP, but Outright Games, as you said, is the publisher. So what they do is they help manage that process. They do distribution, they do testing, they do marketing, they provide the funding for all of this stuff to happen. So each team at Outright, Cartoon Network, and PHL kind of fill their role to then ultimately come together to release this kind of big open world game.
There are a lot of Ben 10 games out there. Have you had any experience with Ben 10 before you guys got involved with this project?
I've had a lot of experience looking at Ben 10 games and seeing kind of what's been done and what's out there, what players like, what players were looking for. And we also made it a point to look outside of Ben 10 games to see, with what we wanted to do, what were some really good touch points and kind of things to look at to make sure that we brought into the Ben 10 game universe. Really cool open world mechanics that were fun and accessible for kind of the Ben 10 audience. But our experience with the Ben 10 franchise really starts with the multiplayer VR game that we released called Ben 10 Omnicharged. It's a location-based VR game for 1 to 3 players, where players kind of step into the role of a special suit that Ben has created, and Ben and Gwen and Max have created, that allow other people to take form of, Heat Blast, Forearms,
Sure.
Our favorite Molestache, a couple other, really cool aliens.
You guys brought Molestache into the fray, at least in this experience. What motivated you guys to do that?
We had 10 to choose from for Omnicharged, for the VR game, and it was pretty much all the hits, and then we had like a 10th slot. We're like, what do we want to do here? And we gave a list to Cartoon Network, and all of the weird aliens we chose had really cool kind of VR mechanics that would work really well. And Molestache is one of them. That was at the top of the list, and luckily they were just like, yeah, sure, great, go for it.
That's awesome. So that leads into my next question, though. What was the experience like working with Cartoon Network on this game?
Yeah, we've partnered with them quite a bit on a lot of different things. Some that have been released, some that haven't been. They looked to us when this opportunity came up to see if we wanted to do this game. With Outright as the publisher, they were publishing Ben 10 games previously, and when the opportunity came up to kind of do a pivot and kind of reinvent it a little bit, they came to us and they asked us, and we're like, heck yeah, let's go, let's do this.
How much freedom did you guys have with the story? And I know you mentioned the art and the aliens that you were able to use for this game.
Yeah, so story was pretty easy. We came up with a couple concepts, and we ran it by the narrative team and the writing team at Cartoon Network, and they helped kind of push us in certain directions and help us make it be, I guess, language appropriate. Well, not that we use curse words, but
Sure.
Things that Ben would say, or brand specific things that we may have missed, a little bit. But they really helped us kind of mold the story. But it was our original pitch. And in terms of game mechanics, a lot of what we came up with in our game design document fit within what they wanted to do. And a lot of the systems that Terry created worked for the Ben 10 universe. And Cartoon Network has a very large brand guide for how things should look, the colors that they should be, all of this good stuff that we use as reference to make sure that our aliens were on model and on brand. So when we released the game, it didn't look like some weird knockoff. It actually
Sure.
looked like Heat Blast, and it had the effects and had the voice and it all the good stuff that players would expect Heat Blast to have.
We talked a little bit about the story and just kind of how Cartoon Network guided you a little bit. Some fans pointed out that the game takes place, it looks like it takes place around season 3 of the show or near the end of it. Is the game story canon? Is it just sort of within its own game timeline? What did you guys have for reference there?
It's kind of a mix. So we've actually seen a lot of comments online where fans were like, he's wearing the season 3 Omnitrix, like that's kind of where it takes place within, you know, the universe, which is correct. So we have the season 3 Omnitrix, but our game, as you know, kind of it comes out in a couple weeks, and the Ben 10 movie also hits around I think the day before, the day after the game comes out. Which our game is very different. Our game is Ben is very much on Earth, and in the movie he's in space. So we have kind of our own thing happening. I guess it's like, yeah, a game universe, maybe a game story which exists outside of the TV timeline. But we do have touch points there that make sure it connects. But yeah, we're kind of telling our own thing.
You guys worked with a lot of voice actors. Did you guys facilitate the lines and like kind of making sure that they fit the tone of the game that you were recording, or was that facilitated by Cartoon Network? How did that script, voice actor, what kind of goes into that workflow?
Basically, we wrote the script, which had a number of original characters and a number of obviously Ben 10 characters. And Outright was really great in helping us coordinate getting the actors to do the actual characters that they do in the show. So Tara Strong is Ben, Greg Sipes plays Kevin, we have Troy Baker as Lord Decibel, plus he also plays an original character that we created. John DiMaggio is Forearms, plus some other kind of NPCs around the world. So like, we were really lucky to have like A+ voice talent in this game doing the roles that they do on television. So yeah, so we wrote an entire story script and a bunch of exclamations and all kinds of other lines that characters need for combat and any kind of other scenario. And we had them all come into a recording studio in Los Angeles over, I think it was like maybe a week, 2 weeks, and they banged out everything for us, and it all sounded great. It was like, it's like they're professionals or something.
It's like they've done it before a few times.
Yeah, right? It's like Tara just like clicks into Ben and just reads down 500 lines, and she's like, all right, I'm done. And we're like, wow, that was great.
We have systems that we've built so that the designers are able, or the audio team are able to go in there and time up when an audio clip plays, making sure that lines up with the right lines, making sure that lines up with the animation and the lip sync of the players or the characters, and all that sort of comes together to make, you know, a little scene.
You mentioned the programming. Terry, would you mind talking a little bit about what goes into programming an open world game like this? Have you done that before or managed a team of people doing that before?
This is actually our first open world game. So it was definitely a very new experience, and there were a lot of challenges, but we were really happy with what we were able to achieve. It's getting this an open world running on the Nintendo Switch, which, as many people know, is not, you know, doesn't have the power of like an Xbox or a PS4. Was definitely the biggest challenge, but I guess we figure if they can squeeze Skyrim onto a Switch, we can do it with our Nintendo open world game.
I don't even know where you would start with building an open world game. I mean, do you look at, so you're also building a story, you're coordinating with side missions and activities and all the other things that you see in the game. Where do you start, just on a basic level, where do you start laying out a map for an open world game? I have no idea. There's so many vast, you know, possibilities.
It's tricky. So, you know, we start really broadly. We do what's called white boxing, which is where you build a version of part or in the whole game in like just with basically gray boxes, like cubes. Like this cube is going to be a house. This cube is going to be, I don't know, a cabin or whatever. And we did that for like the whole open world. And what we're able to do is sort of plan out the layout of everything and the flow of the game without having to have the time spent on like actually building all the art and placing all the little trees and props and stuff everywhere. We can just focus on the structure of it. And once we do that, we're able to say, oh, okay, this part of the map doesn't work super well. Why don't we rein that in? Or why don't we this part was really fun. Why don't we like make this part of the map bigger or whatever? Yeah, that's pretty much where you start. And then once that's finished, you sort of just break it out and I guess refine each section of the map one by one.
Each alien has such unique abilities. Did any of them present an interesting challenge from a programming perspective?
The two that I'd say presented interesting challenges were Wrath with his climbing, which changed a lot over the course of the production of the game. There were some ideas that we had for like free running moves that he could do versus what he can do now, and like some things worked or didn't work, and so that was definitely a challenge iterating on that until we got to a point where we were happy. And then the second most challenging one I'd say would be Shockrock, who has the ability to grapple. He uses a grapple hook to pull himself to different points, and just getting that in view of the camera in the right way, if that makes sense. You know, if there's a grapple point that's like really far away or really high up that you're trying to grapple to, making sure that the player is able to see that and get to it at the right time is definitely an interesting challenge. We played a lot with moving the camera around in different ways.
How was co-op integrated? I mean, was Kevin always supposed to be in the game? Was that kind of, how was he integrated into the story in a way that made the co-op feel, you know, natural?
He's been planned to be in the game from the start, and as our co-op buddy. So we had to, of course, think of a way to incorporate him into the game where he's helping, you know, rather than being a villain or a hindrance to your progress. So from the start of the game, he kind of upfront lets you know, hey, I'm here to help if you need me to help you. Like, you know, in his classic, you can't do it on your own kind of way, like, you know, little bratty. Yeah, so right from the start, he lets you know he's there to help defeat Hex and take down Hex, and you can do that with your friend.
Well, one of the things we wanted to do was incorporate Kevin in a way that didn't have us complicating the story too much. This is primarily a Ben 10 experience, so we wanted to have players focus in on Ben and Ben's journey through the game, and not try to add another moving piece to that whole thing. We wanted Kevin to be there, we wanted that feature to exist, but we didn't want it to be something that complicated things for players, especially as kind of we learned a lot going through play tests and learned a lot about kind of the audience. We tried to keep things, you know, as streamlined as possible to make sure the experience was appropriate.
I played it through single player, but I was going around and exploring some of the other co-op options with my other remote and just kind of seeing what I could do. And it's really cool. I love that you guys put just a versus mode where you just fight each other, because sometimes when you're playing, all you want to do is just fight your friend and just go at it. And so that's really cool that you guys incorporated that. That's awesome. Are there any Easter eggs or secrets players should look for? I mean, obviously you don't want to spoil anything.
Yeah. There's definitely some hidden things in there, some nods to like different like Ben 10 villains. There's a very large fish hidden somewhere in the game. A lot of the collectibles do help like flesh out like maybe a little bit of the backstory, even some characters, and some of the records also do that. For example, there's one of the records you can find in the game is a marching band record, which is Ranger Ryan's like old high school band. And if you play that record, it's just off tune and like horrible like marching music. Yeah, each one of the things has a little bit of I guess narrative and storytelling, and a little bit of kind of fun Easter eggs kind of mixed in. It's a lot of everything.
So obviously there's a bunch of aliens in this game, but are there any in particular that are your favorite to play as when you're testing the game or playing it even now?
I gotta say, Accelerate from me.
I was just gonna say
it's
the same
so fast.
thing.
You can just run around.
I mean, you mentioned testing, and you know, look, with an open world game, our database of bugs was like massive, right? It was huge, and he was the best alien to use to test a lot of things, especially when we took all the debug commands out as we're getting close to like the end of the project. We had to test it like as a normal user. Accelerate, being able to zip from point to point as fast as possible, really cut down our testing time in a lot of ways. So I'm really thankful for him and his super speed.
I found that even though the fast travel option was open, I just really preferred to just run to different areas, because A, you got to explore and possibly find things along the way, and B, I'm really glad that you guys incorporated the rail mechanic to Accelerate. That adds a cool, fun, like traversal, you know, mechanic to the game that, you know, I probably wouldn't have thought of for Accelerate off the top of my head. So hats off to you guys.
Terry's a big fan of Jet Set Radio and wanted to try to put as much of that kind of gameplay
in
the game as possible.
Like Nick said, I played a lot of Jet Set Radio Future and Tony Hawk and that sort of thing. And So when we came to Accelerate, we were trying to think of, what cool abilities can we give him. To me, grinding on rails came like right to the front of my mind because I thought that would be so fun. Yeah, it just gave us a lot of really interesting design opportunities, getting from point A to point B in a different sort of style. If you go into the city section of the game, we basically littered the whole place with different rails. You can grind on power lines. It was just a great opportunity to navigate the world in a different way that we thought was really fun.
My favorite thing right off the bat was Ben's scooter, and I cannot tell you how fun that is, at least until you get Accelerate, because he's just doing kicks and flips and
that was the exact reason it was added, because we needed some other kind of means of quickly traversing the world when you didn't have Accelerate. And go ahead, Terry, you can yell at me for this, but I was very as my job description is to make sure things get done and get that on time. And when the scooter was brought up, it wasn't actually part of the original design. I was very anti-scooter for a long time, and I didn't want it to happen. But I do admit that I was very wrong, and a lot of people really enjoy the scooter. And we managed to pull it off and put a lot of really cool scooter content into the game.
I was going to say, as a little side backstory, if you want to know, the reason why we chose the scooter is because I personally used to ride a scooter to work every day, and these guys would make fun of me. But now the scooter's in the game and everybody loves it.
And funny enough, Ben has a scooter in the show too, so it all makes sense.
I bet you bounced off bushes on your way to work and
every day. Yeah.
Obviously, Ben 10 has a very established visual art style. What parameters did you guys have to work within on creating other characters? Where did those things come from?
So the original characters that we created and the NPC characters are actually based on character sheets for background characters in the Ben 10 show. So as I mentioned before, there's this big Ben 10 brand guide. So there's specific rules and head heights and all this different stuff for a number of different characters. Even if it's a single character in a background plate in the first episode of season 3 or whatever it is, there's rules for that character. So the original characters that we created fell within those rules. So, body style, body shape, eye shape, head shape, there was all of these different things, almost like a character, like a customization or like a Mr. Potato kind of thing. Mm-hmm. We were able to kind of take a lot of different pieces which were on brand and then reassemble them into original characters that we needed to help tell the story of our game. So Ranger Ryan, our Burgermeister Stefan, Marie Gustafson in the Long Horse Inn, all of those characters, if you put them in a lineup with all these other Ben 10 characters or just threw them in the background of an episode, would they fit in? That would be the ultimate goal. We wouldn't want players or viewers to be what is that weird guy back there? He doesn't make any sense, right? So
right.
We really wanted to make sure our characters fit in. I think the environments pose a little bit more of a challenge when it came to staying on brand and figuring out kind of what that translation is from Ben 10 and its very stylized kind of 2D look to 3D assets. Our art director, Bren, worked really closely with Cartoon Network's art director to kind of figure that stuff out. And I went through a number of iterations in terms of model detail, texture detail, grunge brush textures within each model. Because as you know, when you watch the current iteration of Ben 10, any background plate, which is kind of environment focused, if Ben is standing in the middle of the forest or in the middle of the town, all the background plates are super stylized. Viewers are focused on Ben and the conversation or the action that's happening. They're not really focused on the background stuff. Mm-hmm. So for us, we had to take a lot of those plates and need to figure out a lot of how those assets would then look in 3D.
Cell shading and cartoon shading can be really tricky to get right. Getting the outlines to look right on a 3D character and the shading, especially if you're moving through a lot of different environments that could have different lighting setups, being a dark cave versus out in the bright sun, making sure that the cartoon version of the character looks like they fit where they're supposed to be in all those scenarios can be tricky.
Obviously, we talked about your favorite alien in the game, but do you guys have, you talked about aliens that you submitted to Cartoon Network for your other game. Do you guys have any, what's your favorite alien in general?
You got to say, aside from Molestache, of course, I feel like the Ben 10 fandom will come down hard if I don't say Alien X, because everyone loves Alien X.
I'll pull 2 from our prototype, which I thought would have been really cool, but unfortunately we had to cut out of the game. We had gray matter in at one point. We had some really kind of cool puzzles where you would obviously have to shrink down and crawl into like little holes to figure things out. And I think that would have been really neat. I mean, obviously working within that like mechanic in an open world, you probably understand why we cut it, because it really just wouldn't work. A lot of special cases where like it would be only something that gray matter could do, as opposed to like what we have now, where like all of the aliens can traverse the world in all the different ways. Like you weren't really locked to a specific alien to do something. But another one that we cut in favor of actually accelerate, because they kind of would almost do the same thing, was Cannonbolt. In our prototype it was really fun to just like roll around the world as Cannonbolt and just kind of like go off of ramps and knock me. I think we had like a bowling pin set up in one instance to just try to like test it out, see if it was fun. Like all games, things get cut, which is unfortunate.
Well, that's awesome. Maybe we'll see them in a future title or something like that. Maybe if you guys have the opportunity to, that would be really exciting. I know people love Ben 10, and this is a good time to be a Ben 10 fan with the game and the movie coming out. Are there any future plans for Ben 10 Power Trip?
Right now, there's no plans for DLC for the game. So the Power Trip exists as it exists when it comes out. Our intent with this game was to really kind of form a solid base that we can then build off of in the future. Is like create that foundation, that really great, Ben 10 gameplay, the really good Alien gameplay, open world gameplay, and then make sure that gets out in time. It does well, and then from there start building the bigger and better versions as we kind of go, and just really blow it out, with every other version that we decide to do. Obviously, I can't give you specifics on all the things happening in the background and maybe what's going to happen next or where it's going to go. But if people like it, if it does well, if everyone's making videos and talking about it online, I think it's safe to say there'll probably be some more Ben 10 in the future.
Thank you guys so much for coming and chatting. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having us. And yeah, thanks for supporting the game, and thank you to all the Ben 10 fans out there for being so vocal. You might not see us as people who interact on maybe Discords or Reddit or things like that, but we do see your comments. Look, you guys wanted open world game for a very long time, and October 9th you'll have it. So you're welcome.
Looks like I have a big adventure ahead of me. Now where should I go first? It's hero time.
Better start running, baddies.
Follow me.
Check out this firepower.
Gotcha.
Zap.
Smashing time.
Prepare to be canceled, Decibel. Woohoo!
Too hot to handle? Yeah! Double axle dash!
On my way.
This is Take that!
Let's go. Coming through.
Radical!
Powering up.
Let's go!
Getting in my daily reps.